I speak to you in the name of God, who is Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Please be seated. We all are familiar with the parable of the three servants, the two trustworthy ones, and the one who lets his master down. Yet, we know the moral, it's very familiar, about using one's talents. Yet we can... Okay, I wasn't sure. I'll start, sorry. That is better. I'll start again. We all know the parable of the two trustworthy servants and the one who lets his master down. The moral is obvious. We are meant to use the talents given to us. But there's more behind this. Each of us is an individual formed from the teaching and guidance of parents, teachers, other elders, and our own life experience. We each are unique. We're not carbon copies. And in today's parable, we see that, of course, these three different individuals who act differently. But let's go a little further with this. When I was feeling the call to ordination, I had doubts. I wasn't sure. I was sure of the call. I wasn't sure if I could measure up. And a wise older clergyman said to me, "It's not through our strength, but through our weakness that we give glory to God." And so encouraged, I carried on and I applied to enter the Vancouver School of Theology. To my surprise, when I got there, I found for many of my classmates, the story was very similar. We'd all felt the strong call to ordained ministry, but most of us had doubts, not about God, but about ourselves. Can I measure up? Will I be good enough? Somehow that was very encouraging to me. I wasn't alone in having some doubts. And now I want to tell you about two different persons in a former parish I was in. One was a man who looked on life with suspicion and fear. He saw himself as a victim who was poorly done by fate and the world in general. One person I knew referred to him as a cheerleader of gloom. Didn't matter what happened, somehow it would turn, and any good that came to him, he seemed to dismiss and not remember. He had been married, but the marriage had broken up years before because he had had an extramarital affair. And yet he saw himself as a victim. Poor me, I didn't want a divorce. Why did this happen? He obviously didn't think very deeply. And I think the point about this man was that he did not take responsibility. He was totally self-absorbed, totally focused on himself. And he saw everything as acting upon him. He was a victim. He had no responsibility for anything that happened. Now, by contrast, there was a woman named Maureen who had not had an easy life. A woman of my age at the time. She had been married first to a man who beat her in front of their two sons. Eventually, she had the courage to leave and raise her sons herself. In later years, she married a man who was kind to her and to her sons. Then, her elderly parents developed issues to do with aging. Her mother had Alzheimer's disease. Her father's mind was clear, but he was frail physically. She helped them through the various stages of moving from their home to an apartment to a care home and then another care home. She always dealt with her parents with kindness, with respect, and with unending love. I never heard her complain about the burdens put upon her. She herself survived cancer, and then in later years, her husband developed Alzheimer's disease. Her priority was to keep him at home and care for him and give him the best possible life. She arranged outings, just little things that would make each day brighter for him. She always treated him with patience. I never heard her complain. The most she might say occasionally was she was a bit tired. And then again, she had cancer. Even as her illness progressed, she cared for her husband. She continued to host dinners for friends so that he would have the stimulus of other people around him. And before she died, she was able to ensure that he was placed in a care home. Even in the extreme of her illness, she didn't like people fussing over her. When greeting us, when we arrived to visit, she would say to each of us, "How are you? What have you been doing? What's new?" She said she always looked to the good, looked for the positive. She was truly a child of light and walked in light. And her death left many of us with a great gap in our lives. I tell these stories because they remind us of the importance of attitude. We are each shaped by our own lives, our own experience. But how we deal with what is handed to us is what is important. If we look at the parable of the 3 servants, 2 go out confidently to make more money for their master. The third is fearful, afraid of his master's harshness, and so he buries the money in the earth and in the end returns just what he was received from the master. Just so, God gives each of us particular gifts and skills. What we do with them is up to us. Today's parable reminds us of the importance of walking in the light. Today I'm supposed to talk about stewardship. Most of us, when we hear the word, shudder. Money. Do we have to talk about that? I remember a senior clergyman saying to me years ago, "I hate preaching on stewardship because the people the sermon is aimed at never get the point. It totally goes over them. And it's the elderly widow living on a pittance who thinks to herself, oh dear, maybe I can give a little more." We all have different financial resources. Some people are very comfortable and can afford to give more. Others can afford to give less. That isn't important, the amount. What is important is our attitude and our openness. And stewardship is not just about money. It is about our skills, our gifts, our talents. Maybe a person can't contribute much financially, but has particular skills and gifts to offer. Others may be limited by health. Some may even be in a care home, yet they can still contribute in ways. Through prayer, through connecting with others in our community, by supporting, inspiring, and encouraging others. In my pastoral work over the years, I have always enjoyed visits with elderly parishioners, and am often heartened by hearing their life stories, what they have lived through, and where they are now. And at times when I've been struggling, it's helped me to hear those stories. So each of us can offer something. None of us is without any special gifts or skills. Life sometimes distracts us. We get busy with our familiar routines. There is a comfort and a security in the familiar. There's a comfort and security in family and friends, in our custom ways of being and doing. But sometimes it may be helpful to think of the three servants. Is there anything we can do that's new? Is it intimidating? Do we doubt ourselves? Remember, in the parable, it says that the master gives each according to his ability. God never gives us or challenges us with more than we can manage or cope with. So for each of us, the messages today is about stewardship, not only of money, but of time and of our lives. How can you rise to the challenge? Be bold. Go forth in the light and give thanks to God for God's generous gifts to each of us.